One of my favorite things about the tiki lifestyle is that it's just not drinking at a bar. You can actually dress up. So today on Tiki with Ray, my good friends Cookie and Holly Dai are going to join me at the Alibi in Portland, Oregon, and we're going to talk about tiki and fashion. Hey everyone, my name is Ray, or some of you might know me as Tiki with Ray, and we are at the Alibi in Portland, Oregon. It is a tiki bar that has been around since 1947. For the most part, the interior has been the same since its inception, and we're drinking Mai Tais, we're drinking Jet Pilots. Today I'm here with Cookie and Holly Dai, and we're going to talk about tiki fashion. So Holly, tell us what you do.
I'm a burlesque performer. I'm also the owner of Holly Dai Boutique, which is a lingerie line for burlesque performers. Currently, I'm developing a HD retro clothing line that deals with different kinds of pinup clothing. And I have made pinup clothing for myself, a lot for myself. But developing for other people is a whole plethora of interesting complications.
Yeah.
That and I love the pinup community, but gosh, are we picky big bitches? Like,
oh yeah. Well, we know our bodies. We know exactly like how we want everything to fit, and it has to fit perfectly.
Yes.
Yes. So
and if it's just like this much off, we're like
not
no.
happy. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
No way. Totally.
So trying to develop for that community is fun and interesting and challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, there's a connection between this whole thing with tiki.
Yeah.
Tiki can be very, very fashionable.
Yes. I mean, personally, and we're both wearing sarongs right now.
Right.
I'm covering mine up. But maybe I'll derobe later. And sarongs are very fashionable. Shaheen is a very popular retro style that happened, and those pieces from Shaheen, real Shaheen pieces, go for between $200 to $500, even more actually. Sometimes I've seen for $600 if they're in very great quality. And you know, the quality of the dresses that were made back then were not only 50s and 60s, but they were just made very well, collapsed that long. The fabrics, the prints didn't get faded a lot of the times, and there's nothing comparable. And a lot of these fabrics were made in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And you know, you have Hilo Hottie.
Oh yeah.
And those have definitely continued as a brand continued, but it's definitely continued into the 80s and less flattering fashion. I think that
they make great house dresses
now,
fantastic
right? House
the
dresses.
Muumuus. Yeah, that's what I like to wear home.
Yeah.
A muumuu.
The muumuu.
When did muumuus start becoming in vogue? From the beginning of it all, or
I would.
Because I think that's more like 70s.
I feel like I'm guessing, but I feel like it's earlier than 70s.
Wow,
I feel like it's something that happened in the culture more in the 20s and
in
30s.
the 20s.
I'm thinking so. I could be wrong, and go ahead and like bite me a new one if I am. But I feel like.
Well, what I'm going to do is, if you're wrong, I'm just going to edit this out of the video.
Yeah,
so they won't even know that you made a mistake.
I mean, I think it was more earlier.
I'm going to overdub your answer with, it's actually from.
It's actually from this part here. Well, I think it was earlier. I mean, the fashions and even just the. Gosh, I was just watching some historical things about Hawaii itself, about how there was that group of white men who were like, we're going to take it over, and they made the queen succeed, and that's why we took over. Yeah, it was very interesting, but just that fashion was happening before, during that time frame. I mean, that a lot of its influence, and women didn't even wear grass skirts until tourists.
Yeah, I kind of see that's sort of like a tourist thing.
Yeah, it's a tourist
I think that's the thing that people don't realize. There's Hawaii, and then there's like the real Hawaii.
Right. I mean, and someone who's not from that culture, it's hard for them to speak completely from all the history and to say one thing or the other. But definitely the fashion in Tiki has a lot to do with pinup fashion, with emphasizing in flowers and tropical leaves, and
we're all about the pageantry.
Why, what do you mean? What do you mean by that, Cookie?
I think that's one of the things, like, as somebody who's a pinup enthusiast, that draws me to Tiki is that pageantry. It's, you know, the over-the-top decorating. It's the big flower headpieces and the big retro hair, the bright colors. Yeah, so that's the draw for me.
What did you get into first, Cookie? Did you get into the rockabilly pinup thing first, or Tiki?
I feel like it was just like a natural progression from like high school. It was ska punk was kind of like a thing that I was really into, and I dressed like very like a rude girl or whatever. And then
are you talking like the Specials and bands like that?
Yeah, Real
the
Big
Selectors
Fish, Save Ferris, Dance Hall Crashers, you know. And so, well, growing up, I was very into Elvis anyways, and so it was just like a natural part, something I was very attracted to, and that's what I found in ska punk, and then from there, you know, it just kind of went into the rockabilly, and from there, more into, pinup, and then Tiki just fits well into that.
I remember when I started.
Lifestyle.
I remember when I first started getting into Tiki and started seeing what people are wearing. I mean, for guys, it's just aloha shirts.
But you can wear the aloha shirt if you're a guy going to a Tiki bar, or if you're just a retired man down the street,
or a wacky DJ.
or a wacky DJ.
When I think, I mean, it's funny that you bring that up, because it's like I remember, like, when I think of like Hawaiian shirts, I think of Weird Al Yankovic.
Oh my god!
You know, and I'm just sort of like. And I didn't wear them forever. I mean, I was like going to tiki bars since like almost like a decade ago, and it wasn't literally until like 2 years ago that I even bought a shirt for the first time. But then I went to a party where like everyone was dressed up, and I'm like, oh, okay, this could be cool. This isn't wacky or tacky
There's
or
other
anything.
people like me out there.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I noticed is like when I started seeing what the women were wearing, it wasn't too far off from like what women would wear in the rockabilly scene.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think the reason why is because the time frame would be like 50s, early 60s?
I mean, that's kind of when Tiki obviously came about, and it was just it was a bunch of people wanting to relive their time in World War II, going across the sea and having this nostalgia, right? So, I mean, that's when you think about Tiki and the Tiki fashion, it definitely harks back to the 50s and 60s. I think that you were talking about all the glamour and the glitz. The reason why I think I am personally drawn to Tiki so much is because when you go into a Tiki bar, a good Tiki bar, in my opinion, there's so much stuff to look at that you don't look at your cell phone. Because you're constantly being like, oh, but look at that, look at that. And that makes it so much more interesting. And I think the same thing happens with your fashion, though, when you have like the hairpiece and you have like the matching bangles.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring my bangles. And
But you have your fabulous band earrings.
And like,
how cool is it with Tiki and Tiki bars that like you can actually dress up for it?
yeah.
And you can dress the part.
Do people do that anymore for other bars? Like
Is there any other type of bar that you can actually dress up for?
No, I mean, well, we dress like this all the time.
Yeah.
So when we go into any normal bar, you know, people kind of look at us strange. Where are you going? Are you in a play? Surely you're not just dressed like this on a Friday night. But when you go in a Tiki bar, it just kind of feels like you fit into the scene, you fit into the vibe of what's happening. So,
Absolutely.
So we feel more comfortable. It's just why we're attracted.
Cookie, the next time that happens to you and you're at a regular bar and someone comes up like, well, what's going on? Are you guys going somewhere? You'd be like, no, we're just not lazy.
this is our life. Why aren't you dressed up?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you didn't dress up.
Oh,
for
you
this?
wore sweats? Okay.
If there's anything that I miss more than anything, is just the fact that people did used to dress up.
Yeah.
They were concerned about what their image was when they would go out. And you're right. I mean, you see people going to the supermarket, they're wearing like sweatpants and flip-flops and stuff like that, and they don't even care. It's a shame.
I think there's a big distinction, though, about the way that pinup women dress up now versus then versus, like, me personally, I don't dress up because I'm being told to dress up. I dress up because it makes me feel a certain way. It makes me feel fancy. And, yeah, it does bring me attention. I mean, it is attention kind of, but it's in my own way where, like, I'm not doing it because I want to wear heels because I don't want to run away from my, someone who's chasing me. I wear heels because I like the way they feel and I wear them comfortably.
Yeah.
And I wear clothing that actually, I'm so much more comfortable in my pinup clothing than I ever was wearing my leggings and my sweaters and hoodies, and I sometimes wear those when it's cold. Rarely. At home.
Right.
But when I go out,
Yeah, you don't go to bed like this.
No.
The flower piece would get all kind of messed
I
up.
might have in the past on a drunken night.
Right.
You've done it, but
May
not
or may not have
intentionally.
happened.
It may or may not. It may or may not have happened. I don't know.
So how did you get into the whole vintage fashion?
You know, honestly, I had a guest from Australia, and her name was Miss Betty Bombshell, and she came over to my place, and every day she wore pinup, and I've always liked pinup, but I've never like invested the money. And she came over every day she was dressed up, and I was like, "You're so cute! You're so cute!" And I was like, "Why can't I be cute every day? I can't. Why do I not try to be cute every day?"
Right. It's just living your best life.
Yeah. And so I started buying the clothing and realizing that like a lot of it was cost. The cost of good clothing.
Yeah.
You pay for what you get.
Right.
And things
It's not fast fashion.
no. And I recently got my best friend into it, and she's like, "Damn you! I want all these clothes." But the good thing about when you do wear pinup clothing is one,
Yeah.
they last forever. Two,
Super
the
flattering.
resale, yeah, super flattering. But the resale value, like if you get sick of it, you can sell it for
Yeah.
almost as much as you paid
If
for
not
it.
more, because people really follow these designers that make these clothing. It's such a niche.
Yeah.
And they have such a following. We all have our unicorns, our
I
items
sold
that we're,
this dress twice for $200,
which is not
Wow.
what you.
which is
paid
not
for
what I
it.
paid for it. But
Right.
I found two of them once and sold them because I was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, you never know.
No, you don't.
And then like the dresses, they are expensive, but like I said, like they're an investment. And have you ever thought about paying for clothing and think, well, you know what, I'll probably get a return on that?
You know, it's like you buy and you just assume you're going to throw it away in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that's a terrible. First of all, someone who creates fashion, that is a terrible way to not only for the earth, but for people who are trying to make a living.
Yeah.
So if you're buying a $20 shirt, whatever, wherever you're going, I'm not going to name brands, but imagine how much work it took
Yeah.
to literally make that shirt. How many hours it took, or how many? I mean, even if it didn't take that long. If that person was being paid a wage, if that person who was supervised being paid a wage,
Yep.
you're basically underpaying anyone who has ever made that cheap shirt.
Yeah.
And anyone who is maybe U.S. designer, like they end up not being paid because they're like, that's so expensive. Well, it's not that expensive. If you were going to pay me to make that dress, imagine the time to draw the pattern, to design it, to sew
Yeah.
it. I deserve to be paid that amount of money for that time. And I don't think that it changed the way that I care about clothing, and
Right.
I'm an advocate for not really buying cheap stuff in a good way. Like you pay for what you get.
You know, there's a parallel with vintage clothing with vintage furniture. Well, I think the reason why you can still find a lot of vintage furniture from, like, we'll say the mid-'60s back is because that stuff was built to last. And something I always think about is like, well, will there ever be a point when like a couch from the 90s will be considered vintage? And I don't think so, because I have a feeling that a lot of furniture, a lot of stuff that was made in the 80s and on, it ain't even going to be around.
Right. It's just gonna fall apart.
You know, if you buy your couch from IKEA, isn't even going to be around in like 5 years. So how can you collect it or be vintage, right?
That's sad.
It is, and I agree with you. I have a feeling it's like, hold on to things. Why throw things away that you don't have to?
Yeah.
I honestly feel mid-century, talking mid-century,
Right.
is timeless. There's a specific look to it, but it is timeless. I can't really say that about like the 70s and the 80s. I mean, they have a look to it, but there was a point where like bell bottoms and big ass sideburns just become ridiculous. I was a teenager in the 80s, and I look back at it now and I'm just like, it's all ridiculous. Do you like pastel colors? I don't, that was, but like stuff like 50s and the 60s, it's like, it looked good back when I was a teenager, it looks good in the 90s, it looks good now. I think it's timeless.
I love it. All the decor, like the clocks, the radios, everything. It had just more of a sleek, stylized, and it's all lasted,
Yeah.
And in fact, increased in value, really.
I agree. There you go. Tiki can be timeless, right?
Yeah.
I think so, though.
it is interesting to think about designing and fashion, about the silhouettes and the shapes that once we did reach the mid-century, we really did create a silhouette and a shape that was both flattering and not too modest.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we went up in our dresses. And I'm not saying that I absolutely am someone who's I make lingerie. I'm an advocate for skin. I love skin. I'm not saying that you should cover yourself, but it's interesting to think that like those silhouettes that were made in the 50s are still referenced over and over again in current fashion.
Yeah.
In the 80s, there was a revival of the 40s. You know, the pre-plums.
The peplums.
Peplums. I say them wrong all the time.
Yeah, I love when 80s does 50s.
Yeah.
So cute. It is such a timeless. Yeah, I love it.
I love when the 80s do the 50s.
Sometimes it's a beautiful thing. And
I know when the 70s, I remember when the 70s did the 50s, it was Sha Na Na. You know what's fun? You've seen the movie Grease, right?
Oh, of course.
Well, that movie was made in the late 70s.
Uh-huh.
And you can tell that movie was made in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's like 70s meets the 50s.
Right.
So like everyone's like wearing like 50s. The guys are wearing 50s suits, but their collars like large
Big
and stuff
collars.
like
Gotta
that.
still look cool.
Olivia Newton-John like has like Jersey hair, but this is supposed
Her
to be like
hair, I was like, that is not
It's-
okay.
yeah, who knows? That's what I really loved about Mad Men, because it was the closest I felt that like anyone could get back to like, yes, this is probably what the late 50s and the early 60s looked like.
Gosh, I never even finished Mad Men because I do love the era, but I still can't. Like, I'm not one of those people that are like, I wish I could live in the 50s because I can't handle the chauvinism. So
Yeah, it's more about the style and not. It's more about the style than the values.
and not the values necessarily, especially even the tiki.
I agree with you. Have you ever heard of Charles Phoenix?
Mm-hmm.
He
Absolutely.
You know, the
Tiki Con.
He was at TikiCon.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a
Hilarious.
photographer, and he's just.
Yeah.
He's the ambassador of Americana, and he has a quote that I have adopted, and that quote is, "I don't want to go back in time. I just want to be able to touch it."
Yeah.
And my feeling is I don't want to go back in time, but man, it sure looked good,
Yeah, right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And on that, mahalo, aloha, and all that other crap.
Mahalo, aloha. Bad luck not to drink after you. Cheers.
Get it down there, Ray.
So I drank my share and your share.